My name's David Catzel. I'm with Microsoft's Developer Platform Evangelism team, the DX team. I'm a business and strategy guy, not a technologist, so all of the tough questions get addressed to Steve Cronan, my colleague over here on my left. My particular focus is around content creation, management, and storage in the cloud. Historically, Microsoft has been a little more focused on the distribution side of the equation, and we tend to respond to what media companies and studios and networks ask of us. We have sales teams around the world, we have representatives around the world, and we tend to try and respond to those particular requirements. And the initial inquiries around cloud were always around the distribution side of the equation. So we responded with a bunch of solutions around over the top, and as you can see on the slides, there are some of the examples of focus we have worked with. And we've also done a large number of very large-scale live events, Super Bowl, World Cup, and you can get a sense of the extraordinary numbers that one deals with. And then, of course, the Sochi Olympics. And in particular, you can see 2.1 million viewers streaming event around the US versus Canada semi-final hockey game. So we managed to show the cloud's elasticity and ability to deal with these enormous shifts in demand, particularly around live events. About a year ago, we started looking further downstream because the inquiries were coming in from our customers about content creation, particularly metadata managed, and then especially storage, archiving in the cloud. And there were a lot of questions around tiered storage, hot, cool, cold, and how do we automatically manage the shift from the one layer to the next. In response to that, sorry, I've jumped ahead of myself. I just put a couple of slides in here to give you a sense for the kind of scale that Microsoft operates in the cloud. And the numbers are fairly self-explanatory, but we've made about a $15 billion and increasing every day investment in the cloud, and enterprise, rock solid, security is a key issue. We talk a lot about compliance across the cloud. So yes, there's physical security, yes, there's intrusion security, all the usual testing that everyone in the cloud does. But specifically with regard to the media industry, we're CDSA certified, we're working on the MPAA side of the equation, and we're starting to successfully address the concerns that most of our media partners have about security in the cloud. And I think we're at that tectonic shift that is starting to happen where studios are becoming more comfortable with their assets in the cloud, particularly when you show them how unsafe they actually are on premises. So part of the reason for the focus downstream around content creation, management, and storage in the cloud is the requirement to streamline the workflow. A lot of inquiries around, this speaks to the George Clooney question that Albie had earlier. Executives, directors, editors, stars, all the people that give permission along the workflow, needing access to the content has become very important and has become a real clog, a real problem in the workflow in terms of, boy, I'm not very articulate around this. It's become a problem in streamlining the workflow. The second piece of the equation is the metadata component. Metadata leaking out in the system, metadata from the camera not making it to post-production. And we also look to the question of metadata that is generated by the content and metadata about the content. So metadata generated by the content is everything from the stuff generated by the camera, the color densities and everything else, all the way to metadata about the content, which would be, let's take the example of the movie Selma. I might go out and scout 10 locations, and I've captured all sorts of rich stories from people who were there during the Martin Luther King period. I have personal photographs. They've shared film footage with me. And all of this gets lost because I'm only going to go and shoot at one of the 10 locations. And all of that rich metadata that could be used for digital extras evaporates. The other kind of metadata that's important is the metadata about the content. For example, digital backplates, graphic elements, all of the elements that might be used in video games or ancillary products, digital comics, or subsequent films, the kind of smoke and special effects kind of algorithms that could be repurposed subsequently. So the notion that metadata makes the content more valuable, makes the content more monetizable. In June of last year, in response to this, we pulled together a development lab in Redmond and invited the senior technical executives and senior business executives from a bunch of ecosystem partners to come spend 3-4 days in the lab and put together a proof of concept that we could show to the industry that helped really illustrate the value of content creation and management in the cloud. Final draft was present, representing the script side of the equation. Ari participated, Red participated by phone, Assimilate for digital dailies and color processing, Adobe Premiere representing the post-production side of the equation. Fifth Kind provided the workflow. And so what's illustrated here is a bit of a layer cake with Azure, the cloud services at the bottom, including Azure Media Services, Azure Batch, so to handle rendering, to handle transcoding on the fly, to handle any of the kind of basic cloud processing needs, as well as some of the video processing needs, such as speech-to-text recognition. What we didn't use there is things like pattern recognition, facial recognition, but all of those could be available as a service as well. And using the cloud as the base, Fifth Kind as the workflow, everything from ingest of the script all the way through to post-production, Aspera for transmission. Very, very, very successful experience for everyone. There was this general feeling that this is the kind of solution that the industry is ready for. Again, recognizing Microsoft's in the enabling business. We're not in the media business. And Fifth Kind was a core piece of that solution, and we built a very strong strategic partnership, and I'd like to invite Steve Cronan, who's CEO and founder of Fifth Kind, to come up and talk a little bit about their solution.
So it was a really exciting project working in this ecosystem. Of course, anytime you're able to get a number of partners together to actually work on a project and get a bunch of engineers in a room together, we can make things happen. So it was really exciting to bring together all of these different talents, look at each other's APIs, be able to programmatically integrate to each other to try and build out this ecosystem. So we did a hackathon up at Redmond, and this allowed us to progress this story of bringing all these different tools together. So what we've done is we've looked at the whole ecosystem around how we manage, search, retrieve, review, collaborate, integrate, and distribute and publish all the files throughout the creative process. So we've done an analysis around all the different departments, both internally within the production and externally throughout the ecosystem, of what is required to have a fully integrated production process. This allows us to look at the metadata, the assets, the workflows holistically from start to finish to be able to bring maximum value throughout the whole creative process. We've found that by getting as far upstream into the pre-production process allows us to start building those habits from day one, that people know where to go to find information, they know where to put information, and you're getting the maximum enrichment of metadata throughout the actual process. By then having a centralized ecosystem of all these files, you're actually getting cross-pollination of information that enriches the searchability. So if you're ingesting a script, we can extract scene information, character information, set information, use that to actually enhance our searchability as we're ingesting different files throughout the various points in the process. You're able to leverage the initial workflows of concept art, say approvals and review, all the way down into marketing, so that you know what is that final asset that's going to go into the art book or the extras, or maximizing your actual investment in your assets throughout the whole process. The way we look at the process is analyzing every kind of step throughout the each department and what are the types of assets that they're generating throughout that process. So it starts with a script. What sort of experience does the actor need to view that script? Watermarking on the fly, you know, an iPad viewer, an iPhone on the desktop. How do we ensure that it's all vector-based, that they're getting a great viewing experience for that? Then as we dive down for research, what people are generally doing is going out to Google Images or some other type of image search and actually bringing files in. So we built a little browser plugin to streamline that process. We start going to storyboarding, concept art, set designs. How do we handle these really big architectural diagrams? How do we ensure that all of the color quality is coming through so that when you're approving an actual costume, you're actually getting you're approving the expectations on how that color is going to come through. As we go into locations, you're extracting geotags information. We're pulling up a Google map to connect the actual metadata to something visual. As you get into casting, you're pulling in photos and videos and hooking into IMDb to pull in IMDb metadata of that actor's history. As we get into previs, what we start getting into is the bidding workflows. So now we're collecting the scripts, the storyboards, the previs, and we're able to securely distribute that out to visual effects vendors to streamline the bidding workflows. Then we get into the meat of production, which is the actual shooting process. On set, of course, we're generating all of the actual footage we're going to use to cut into our final product. During that process, you're generating metadata from sound, from continuity, from script supervisors, from the camera. Visual effects has a different set of needs from the editorial department or from the sound department. So it's also about trying to consolidate all the information that we're generating throughout that process into a centralized database that can be carried all the way through the process, whether it be embedded in the files themselves, whether they be sidecard files. And it's also important that we have an infrastructure that can scale to manage these needs of the amount of data, the amount of files, and the amount of users that we would have hitting this ecosystem. So that's been a part of our exploration into our service-oriented architecture. We can infinitely scale any service. We've separated out a unified, centralized authentication service from content delivery, from metadata, from video streaming, from the search engine, and ensuring that we can infinitely scale any of these individual components. What's been exciting about then integrating into the Microsoft infrastructure is the additional platform services such as speech-to-text, visual analysis, translation, all of the really exciting components that come with metadata automation. That's a really big part of what we've been focused on this year, is ensuring that we can automate as much of the process as possible and enrich that so that if you're trying to do photo kills, it becomes a more streamlined process to know which files are you sharing with what actor to actually get them to do their approvals. Then, of course, we feed the editorial pipelines, and then marketing becomes a huge, big component of what we do. Because we've been able to capture everything all throughout the process, marketing only gets access to approved files, and they're able to distribute that out to their various partners. As a testament to this, most recently, Disney uses for all of Star Wars pre-release distribution. So every poster, every trailer, anything secure and sensitive you saw came through our system globally, all localized, and they put us through the extremes of security review to do that. So not only have we been doing penetration tests for over 5 years, but Disney put us through source code review. So they had a third party analyze every piece of source code and ensure that we could absolutely protect all of their content, and we're able to successfully distribute hundreds of thousands of files globally and support all of their pre-marketing and marketing distribution pipelines. So at the heart of it, we were about streamlining and automation. How do we ensure that we can have a seamless process for the user, that they can work with a system that requires minimal friction to get to the file they want, to scale this again to manage hundreds of thousands, if not millions of files throughout the process. And how do we do it across not only an individual user, so creatively I can manage myself, how do I manage my department, how do I manage my production, or how do I manage my studio? And how do I share that information throughout the whole process? What's been really exciting is with Marvel, last year we distributed over 4.5 million files to 2,500 companies, and we saved them over $1.5 million of production. $400,000 to $500,000 of that was reuse of assets. So by having one central ecosystem, rather than saying, here's a casting system, here's a script system, here's a daily system, here's a marketing system, this one ecosystem has allowed us to unify and bring great value to the overall process. The communication, nothing leaves that studio without executive approval. So everything from the initial artist up through the various creative processes on production, up through the executives, out to all their various partners, is all streamlined through this one process. And the collaboration to be able to approve more efficiently is actually proven to show an increase of the number of versions that we're generating throughout the process. So whether that be a number of concepts or storyboards or actual shots of a VFX shot or a sequence, etc., we're improving the quality of your products because you're actually communicating more effectively and getting a higher turnover of versions. And then, of course, all the different file conversion. We want to take away those technical questions from the creative process. How big is the file? What type of codec is it? What image format is it? All of our processing engines are able to support over 50 different video codecs, 300 image formats, a dozen document formats, and ensuring that the users do not have to think about how do I secure it, what device is it being viewed on, how big is it. Aspera and Signiant are both integrated to support uploads and downloads directly through the web interface as well as on the back end. And then all of the integration pipelines as well. We have really rich RESTful APIs. One of our big success stories with our APIs is Toyota have just distributed their system globally to manage all dealership distribution around the world. And they actually built a specific platform on top of our APIs to facilitate that. So all of the agencies actually ingest all their files into our interface, but all of the dealerships actually access the content through a specifically designed interface for dealership distribution. It's actually the first US technology that Japan has adopted within the Toyota organization, so it's been a really successful rollout for us. So security, as I mentioned, we've been through the ringer on that, and it's not only from the way we write the code. We have both server and application level intrusion detection systems. We've have watermarking on the fly, both visually and forensically. We have multi-factor authentication, both with the Microsoft and Google authentication apps or email second factor authentication. There's an OAuth tool to allow you to integrate authentication into your various systems. We've had users do mass migrations of data through our APIs, as they've migrated from other systems, and as well as all of your access controls. And we do something unique, which is called metadata-based access. So traditionally, if you're working in a lot of, evolving from the traditional file system, people would manage access around folder structures. You would create a folder, you'd give someone access to that folder, and therefore, generally anything under that structure you're able to see. But what we've found is that putting that burden on the ingester to define access controls is actually quite a hindrance to the creative process. An artist who's creating a file, he doesn't know who's supposed to see it, or she. All they know is, what is this asset? This is a storyboard of Iron Man fighting Captain America as per the Civil War. So what we've done is we've said, define what those assets are. Apply this metadata. We're going to try and enrich that as much as we can automatically. And then manage your access rules based on that metadata. So I could say you can see everything across Marvel, or just Iron Man 3 concept art, or just the approved assets within Marvel. So that actual decision to change something from work in progress to approved is actually an access control decision. That decision you might make on set or near set to say what's a circle take and what not is also an access control decision. So what's interesting is that we're leveraging that point of data all throughout the ecosystem to not only control access controls, but then to influence the archive. So what tier of storage that we're going to store data on is controlled by what decisions are made throughout the process. We don't need to keep non-circle takes on high-speed storage. We don't need to keep non-approved assets or rejected assets on high-speed storage. We can move that off to cheaper tiers, but let's make that archive transparent. So if you do request that source material, we're going to go back into the various layers of where that data exists and pull it back for you, encode it, transcode it, watermark it, distribute it wherever you need to, and make that a very seamless process. So of course, reduction in costs is through the unification of all this, the automation, reduction in labor, No need to look at 5 different tools to figure out where your assets all live. Reducing paper and DVD printing distribution. We've been able to even facilitate all the way down to Starlight Foundation kids watching pre-release movies from their hospital beds. So this is a fully developed ecosystem. Our work with Microsoft is only going to enhance that even further, bring in all of the technical expertise and their army of resources behind that to streamline and automate as much of this as possible. So yeah, that's it. Love any questions if you have any.
In your earlier slide, you showed all the different processes in the production and post-production. Are you actually doing VFX work or editing work, or are you actually just being the ramp for those partners?
Correct, yeah. We're basically the platform that helps facilitate the movement of information, the capture of metadata, the sharing, but we work with visual effects houses, editorial post houses, whatever, to help facilitate the movement of that information. So for example, in a trailer's workflow, Marvel will ingest all their dailies, they'll get that watermark, they'll push those out to Trailer Park, they'll cut that film, they'll ingest that back into the system. So our goal is to be the best software company we can be to streamline and facilitate the processes around the creative process.